Obamacare wasn't going anywhere, Ezra. But I mean, the question now is, does John Boehner allow the country to go over the fiscal cliff and default on its debt because he literally can't corral members of his own caucus?
And is John Boehner in charge?
Well,
this is, to me, the great missed dimension of this, and I think Michael gets at it very well. We conceive of everything in Washington as a fight between Republicans and Democrats. From the beginning, the core dynamic here has been a fight between Republicans and the Tea Party. John Boehner did not want this fight. Mitch McConnell did not want this fight. Paul Ryan did not want this fight. They did not want it over Obamacare. They did not want to shut down the government. And nobody quite knows how to resolve that. It is plausible that John Boehner and Barack Obama could come to a deal.
Yes.
What is not plausible is that John Boehner and Barack Obama could come to a deal that the Tea Party first signs off on. And that has been, through this whole thing, the thing that makes it actually so hard to solve. The thing that I think also is so funny about this, it's not just Obamacare we've left. Remember the other big thing that Ted Cruz was on? Making D.C. listen, right? That was the two things. It was Obamacare, but the big point was you got to make D.C. listen. Ted Cruz is now personally less popular than Obamacare. The Republicans in Congress are now less popular than Obamacare. The shutdown is wildly unpopular, and yet no one seems to be listening. So we've left both of the original things behind, both Obamacare and this procedural idea that D.C. needs to better reflect the public's will, are both gone. And now we're just talking about something. They just need some way to not seem like they're losing that the Tea Party will accept.
And we need to figure out what's going to happen on October 17th. And I guess in combination with all of this disarray, the fact that you have people in the House, Republicans in the House, not just Ted Yoho, but also Richard Burr, not in the House, but in Congress, saying, you know, is defaulting on the debt such a big deal? Maybe it's going to be like sequestration, or maybe it's going to be like the government shutdown, and maybe we should just try it and see. It's like literally like why your parents tell you not to smoke pot, because before you know it, you are going to be hitting the heroin pipe.
But unlike pot, I should just say,
it's not a gateway.
This is actually a bad thing.
Right. To say nothing of the legalization movement. But do you know what I mean? It's like a gateway drug. That's what the government shutdown has basically been.
It's true, and you know, I think you're looking right now at something of a little mistake that the administration made with sequestration that's coming back to bite them now, which is that they sold sequestration as absolute doom for all of us. And the problem is it has been unquestionably bad for a lot of people. But most of us, you know, people are now getting letters saying your premiums are going up due to Obamacare. The people who've been affected by the sequester did not get letters saying, by the way, you lost your job thanks to the sequester, other than the people who work for the government. So, look, there were going to be people anyway who said, oh, the default isn't a big deal, Obama just lies, period. But the administration has helped them a little bit by exaggerating some previous stuff.
I think also the media has failed too, on some level, in terms of actually exploring, detailing, and reporting on the effects of sequestration and following that as well as we should have.
But sequestration was, I think, a little different in that was actually communication between different members of the American government, right? I mean, nobody had done that before, so you're talking to. What's interesting and unusual here is that they shouldn't be listening to Barack Obama on the debt ceiling. They should be listening to J.P. Morgan, to Goldman Sachs, to the Chamber of Commerce. And the entire Republican business community has aligned, and just the business community in general, has come to Washington. You cannot do this. The line from J.P. Morgan's chief economist is that defaulting on the debt is like that Hieronymus Bosch painting of hell. That is the kind of language you're using. And
do we have a full screen of that?
And the amazing thing is that folks like Richard Burr, Orrin Hatch, the ranking senator on the Senate Finance Committee, don't believe the business community now. They think it's not just that they are skeptical of Obama. That's understandable for Republicans. It's that they've stopped listening to the business community, to economists, to expertise in general.
Look, I do want to talk, though, about, I mean, we are obviously, the predicate here is that somehow John Boehner quiets the Tea Party or throws them under the bus, one way or the other. But if there is a deal, I thought yesterday some big things happened, which is to say the president opened the door and was quite frank about the fact that the White House would accept a very short-term extension of the debt ceiling or raising of the debt ceiling and a continuing resolution. That was not the position before. That seems to be a major overture to John Boehner and the House Republicans, to which John Boehner responded, that is unconditional surrender. Do we have any hope that if there is a bargain, it will include some of these terms?
Well, Boehner saying unconditional surrender is really his way of staking out that hardcore position that sort of he's been doing all along, which is trying to show his rank and file he's going to fight to the bitter end. But we have now started to see how a compromise could come together. Howard Fineman wrote a very important piece today where he said that Heritage Action and Freedom Works have sort of said, look, we have no problem with extending the debt limit, albeit temporarily, if we can keep the fight and focus on the president's health care law. So if that is in fact true, and those arms that really run the hardcore conservatives in the House GOP conference say, let the debt limit be raised, albeit temporarily, continue the fight on the health care law, perhaps there's some scenario where the government is continuing to be shut down, but the debt limit is raised. However, when you look at the possibility of a short-term extension for both...
Just stop there for 1 second, Luke. So we raise the debt ceiling, but the government remains shut down.
Yes.
Yeah. One plausible scenario, I think Democrats would say you can't do that, and the president would be putting forward a hardcore negotiating tactic on that, but it's a possibility. What I will also say, though, is from that president saying he would have a temporary government funding bill, temporary debt limit, you can sort of see the parameters of the deal. So the president puts that forward. Boehner can go back and say, hey, guys, we're going to keep up the fight. We just need some more time to negotiate. Let's not bring down the entire world economy with us on this. And then you sort of see these longer conversations where the parameters of the negotiation would then be what the deal is. So, okay, we have to figure out some way to drive down debt and entitlement, and maybe you give us chain CPI if we don't do that, and we'll give you capital gains. Something like that. That probably wouldn't happen on capital gains, but something in that perimeter.
I just think that any concession at this point, if Boehner comes back to the caucus and says, listen, we got chain CPI, we got our budget, we got this funded at our levels, and in exchange, we had to concede this. Any kind of concession at this point would be a Pyrrhic victory. I think Boehner's out if he has to make any concessions.
Heritage Action gives them some good cover, though. That's why the piece by Fineman is important. If those guys are serious, where they say we're not going to push forward on the debt limit as much, the fight has to be about the health care law, that does give him some substantial cover to move forward and avert the worst of what could possibly happen.
But you still have the problem with the administration. Okay, fine, the debt ceiling is done. And let's say we have an extension of 6 to 8 weeks on that. You still have the problem of asking the President of the United States to upend his signature piece of legislation, his signature accomplishment, and it just will not happen. There is no negotiating point for this administration on this issue. I don't know what or how Boehner and the Tea Party triangulate the president into a position that he's going to say not only to the American people, but more specifically to his own base, that I'm going to throw this under the water, under the bridge, just to get this done. I don't see that.
I would modify that one slight way. I agree with you in general on that, but I actually think that a bigger part of the problem that people recognize is that the Republican Party, first, they won't negotiate over the shutdown. So let's say you open the government, then you could have a negotiation with the Democrats. I think they would be open to making changes on Obamacare. People talk about the medical device tax, which Republicans say. The thing is, and this has been the problem, Republicans don't want to give anything back. If Republicans are willing to give something back in that negotiation that was not keeping the government open or not causing a financial hellscape, the Democratic Party and I think the president would be open to trading things back, even on Obamacare. And this is why the two should never have been linked in the first place, because the real battle is not Obamacare. That's a separate kind of fight. The real battle is the debt ceiling.
I don't know, Luke. It's going to be real busy up there on Capitol Hill, my friend. Thank you, as always, for your time.
We're working this weekend as well, as Mr. Cantor said, just sent out an email blast.
You know what, Luke?
Yippee.
Every weekend is a working weekend for you, my brother. NBC.
The war on weekends continues
the war
in Washington,
on weekends.
D.C.
Luke Resser, the sage of Capitol Hill. Thanks for your time.
Take care. Be well.
After the break, President Obama is set to name Janet Yellen as the first female chief of the Federal Reserve. But it wouldn't be an Obama nomination if